I born and brought up in a businessman family, wherein my father, who is no more, he told me everything about the business. He told me that business is all about predictions, it's all about on the toes, and business is all about no watch. So he was having a policy which is no watch policy. No watch policy means that a businessman should not look at the watch. Rather, he should look at what is something to be done. Like the time we are speaking, it's around 3:30 in the morning. And he also told me every time that reputation takes years, but it takes 5 minutes to dilute. 5 minutes. When I started my company, my career in 2007 in Treasury, Singapore used to be a very brilliant place. I still remember my first visit in Singapore when Singapore was having commodities pooled operators, which is shortly known as CPO. Used to have commodities trading desk, equity trading desk, bespoke derivatives, trade finance, and whatnot. Eventually, when I first went to Singapore in 2008, I was very fascinated that I'm entering into a country, although it was a 3 day trip, that I entering into a country and that is quite unique and all, and that happened also. And that is the reason Treasury Consulting makes Singapore as a global financial center, as a global headquarter. That's a different thing that due to Chinese virus, I'm in India and by the time it will not resolve, I will not move out. But unfortunately, in the last 2 to 3 years, every news that come from Singapore is not conducive. Whether it is a government side, whether it is, from regulator side, or it is from the startup side. Like yesterday, I spent 2 hours in a day about reading a lot of news, magazines, what's happening, who is doing who and all, because no, updation is must. If you don't update yourself, you will never end up as a success. That is also a part of life. So what happened once today I was reviewing the internet, I got to know that around 339 startups got closed within 2019. So 339. And out of majority of these startups closed, these startups are from Singapore. In fact, last week, I got to know that not very big, but to an extent good company who is into the bakery business, they want their CFO quitted and now they are moving towards shutting because they are facing the losses. And how can we forget the honest bee? So today we're going to discuss something which I really do not want to discuss in public domain, but there are many people who come to me and say that you talk a lot about India, but you do not talk about Singapore. See, I was not talking about Singapore because there was nothing to talk it about Singapore. But if today I have something to talk it about, I am talking. That's a different thing. Like we went into the public domain and we were speaking about and we are talking about Project to Bean, and it is just a start. In the next 90 to 120 days, around over 50 to 60 videos pertaining to Project Ubin would be in the public domain. And we would be the only company in public domain who would be challenging a Singaporean regulator, Monetary Authority of Singapore. So it's not that I don't talk about Singapore, but the question is that, if there is not something to talk, I will not talk. But if there is something to talk, I would surely talk. And because I always talk with facts, you know that I am a person of numbers. Until I have numbers, I don't talk. Because I don't wanted to say something which is not backed up by the numbers. I wanted to say something which is backed up by numbers so that if tomorrow anyone come to me, I can say, I have the proof. These are the numbers. And mind it that every time, whenever we take numbers, we mention the newspaper. We mention the date. And we never claim that these numbers are ours until we feel that these numbers are ours. Yes, the reasoning, the analytics having 10 different cuttings of 10 different newspaper and joining them, that analytics is ours. But the numbers are from newspaper. Numbers is not ours. So two things that happened in the last 1 week that gathered my attention, and unfortunately that is on the negative side as far as the Singaporean regulatory is concerned. And here I am talking about Monetary Authority of Singapore. How can I forget Honest B? I will take a halt here. Our office is at Marina 1, and just straight to that Marina 1 we have downtown, MRT, downtown train, which is DT17, metro station number DT17. Whenever, somewhere in 2018, whenever outside the MRT there used to be a fashion. What used to be a fashion that during lunchtime, which is around 12, Singaporeans take lunch around 12 in the morning, which is around 12 p.m. and they take their dinner around 6:37. Some Singaporeans take even earlier. They take around 5:30 to 6. So, Indians take dinner at 9:30 and they take around 5:30. So many of my Singaporean friends, they call me that when I take dinner, they call me, you are taking supper. Anyways, that's a different thing on a humor side. So at 12 sharp outside there used to be few, not taxis, but I would say bike used to come, those who used to distribute the food, who ordered for it. Now, as usual, marketing is there, so it is from Honest B. Whenever I used to go out around 1:30 to 2, I used to find them and I used to see and think that how can they sustaining that you are giving something absolutely free of cost. You are charging nothing, in fact charging pennies. And how are you sustaining? And one day, out of curiosity, I went to the website of the Honest B and I got to know that this company operates in multiple countries of the globe and it's a heavily funded by venture capitalist. And of course we would have a separate video in that regards, but according to an estimate on the condition of anonymity means that you do not want it to be in public. On the condition of anonymity, and I have the proof, by the way, the venture capitalist said that around $3 billion is being lost in food delivery business, wherein he himself acknowledged that we overestimated it. So due to our mistake, we overestimated the profits in the food delivery business. We lost around 3 billion net profit. In fact, I don't know how many of you are tracking Mr. Jeff, because I track him. He's a very interesting man. Let me tell you, he holds guts. That's a very important thing. So currently Mr. Jeff because is in news for multiple reasons. Some news are good and some are bad. But he was in news last 2 weeks about Deliveroo. Deliveroo is a UK based food delivery startup. And Deliveroo was almost out of cash. When, if I'm not mistaken, I take an indemnity, the number might be a little incorrect. When Mr. Jeff Bezos, Amazon came and lended around $500 million to Deliveroo. At that point of time, a news came in the public domain that the lending of around $500 million by Amazon. I again speak, this number might be plus minus some percentage, we need to check again on Google. But the lending was hefty, it was not small amount, that I remember. So the news came in the public domain that Mr. Because investment of around $500 million in the Deliveroo is not correct, ethical, because due to some regulatory issue at that point of time in the UK. After that, no such news came, and in fact, unfortunately, I also forget it, so I not tracked it, very carefully, because a lot of action happens, So, Honest P is in the newspaper again in Singapore, but this time not as a villain, as a hero. And this shaped not only just just plus minus 5%. This shaped my confidence in Singapore, and especially on Monetary Authority of Singapore and on the media. I always used to believe that Singaporean media is speaking the facts. They are not like Aaj Tak, they are not like Arnab Goswami, they are not like India Today, Rajat Sharma. They speak the facts. But Honest P chairman come in public domain and said that we going to give 3%, which means 3 cent out of $1 or $3 out of $100. Simplistically, 3 cent out of $1. So we give 3 cent out of $1 to the creditors to whom we supposed to pay around $208 million Sing dollars. Rather than criticizing this person, rather than putting this person, rather than making sure this person would be on his toes, bent on the knees and ask for forgiveness that you are having an outstanding funding of around $208 million and you are giving 3 cents out of 10 cents, $1, which means 3% to these people. So practically you are giving around $6 million and rest you are giving equity of your company which is worthless. Somebody made a company, took a $208 million of funding, that company turned bankrupt or not in operation due to the sheer losses. Venture capitalists are not putting the money. Now they can only pay 3% out of 3%, which means 3 cents out of $1. And out of $200 million, they're paying around 3 cents, $6 million. Rather than making this person a villain, rather than asking questions from him, rather than checking the facts that where did the money went, why you end up in the losses, where were the regulatory, why Monetary Authority of Singapore not came in the public domain or not acted early when the debt was accumulating, and ACRA. I am a Singapore based company. Whenever I do audit, I am going to be submitting that audit to ACRA. That's a fact. So when they were submitting their audited financial statement to ACRA, why ACRA not reacted and said that, boss, your debt is growing. You are one side into the losses and another side your debt is growing. What's happening? Business Times make him a hero. You don't trust me? Open Google, type Business Times Singapore. You will get a link, their website link, and see whether this person is a hero or not. I have never expected this from Singapore. Never expected. It's not only a failure on a Singapore part, especially Regulatory Monetary Authority of Singapore and ACRA, it also a failure to the investor who not looked at the audited report of that the company that the debt is growing. It is a failure on both the parts, but having said that, the regulatory failure is more than an investor part, because there are 4 pillars of a democracy. Number 1 is the government, number 2 is the judiciary, number 3 is the bureaucracy / regulatory, number 4 is the media. So media, definitely I have lost whole trust. I used to believe that Business Times is a great newspaper. They publish in Hall and all. Second news we got to know is that Grab yesterday or day before yesterday bought a startup who is into the robo-advisory. We already made a video about the robo-advisory. Can I ask one question? I will not reveal how much debt the Grab hold, but you can check all the numbers on the Google. Thanks to Google, Grab is losing in Indonesia, Grab is losing in Vietnam, Grab is losing in Singapore, Grab is losing in Philippines. I still remember my ride from airport to city when I asked from a driver and he told me that once you pay me $1, $42, basically once we bill you $1, out of which several dollars comes from the VC, then we meet our expenses. Ultimately, he wanted to say that we are in the loss position and everyone know that. Grab is heavily in debt. They have huge losses and still they value 14 billion. That is the eighth wonder of the globe. A company who is in Vietnam, a company who is in Singapore, the company who bought Uber, a company who is operating in Philippines, everywhere they are in the losses. Food business, they are in the losses, and now they wanted to enter into the robo advisory business, which is the wealth management business. How can Monetary Authority of Singapore allow Grab to take the money of the investor, of the general public in the name of the robo advisory? How can you allow them? And how can Grab anyways enter into the robo advisory? This would have negative impact on the whole Singaporean market. Many of you might be thinking I am talking because we filed one of the license in Singapore. We anyways lost our trust on MAS, to be honest. The way they are dealing with the licenses, to be honest. We lost the trust. And we really not interested setting up our bank in Singapore anymore. We are heading to London to set up a bank. But that doesn't mean that Monetary Authority of Singapore, and anyways we are also not interested to enter into the robo advisory, but that doesn't mean that Monetary Authority of Singapore will allow the Grab to be a robo advisor. This would have a negative repercussion on the Singaporean economy. Number one, there are many small robo advisors we have in Singapore. I am not quoting anybody's name. There are many small robo advisors we have in Singapore. They all died. Because Grab is heavily funded by a venture capitalist, and don't forget SoftBank and Alibaba, they both are on the board. I don't have the number, but I know 4 or 5 robo advisors personally that in fact with whom I was talking today about that report, and he told me, Rahul, as and when Grab would enter into the wealth management business, we would die definitely, because the fee he would be quoting, we cannot quote that fee. And we are anyways in losses even today. I am not quoting any name because he told me not to quote my name. How can we allow Grab to come and accept the deposit of the Singaporean on the name of the robo advisory? They are into the existing business which are in losses. They file for virtual banking licenses and saying with Singtel and saying that they would be in the profit. You don't trust me? Open SGX, Singapore Stock Exchange, and check Singtel share price. And why Singtel share price? You go and check the annual report of the Singtel, you will get to know how much debt the Singtel have. 2 debt-ridden companies is filing for a virtual banking license and central bank allowing it. Excellent. And third,
I didn't catch that. Could you try again?
Siri. Third, the very important thing is Grab and C Group. By the way, C Group is also in heavily losses, and I have not checked their 2019 annual report. Maybe their annual report I think might be there in the public domain or not, but I need to check. Grab and C Group come on the board of Economic Development Board, EDB. Singapore is known for EDB, and I have very good respect for Economic Development Board, because Economic Development Board always played a critical role or strategic role in Singapore. And having Grab and C Group on the board of Economic Development Board is clearly means that now the valuation game will start and the talent gate would be over. Because Grab is playing the valuation game, it's clear. Philippines loss, Vietnam loss, Singapore loss, food delivery loss. Now, robo advisory. C Group loss. How can a loss-making company be on the board of the Economic Development Board? Then I should do one thing. 5% of our revenue come from training. Tomorrow I will give an advertisement that one training program will cost $1. I will get millions of subscriptions in 10 minutes. Then next day I will show Treasury consulting revenue 200 million, losses 300 million, then I would also be on the board of Economic Development Board because I'm a big company. I really would like to suggest Monetary Authority of Singapore that Singapore is different than India. Singapore is facing multiple challenges. Trade war, now the Chinese virus. We know that multiple banks already shuttered their shops in Singapore. BNP Paribas closed equity division in Singapore. Maybank firing around 5% workforce in Singapore. In fact, SPH, Singapore Publishing House, who publish many art newspapers, and two of them is this Straits Times and Business Times. They are also firing 150 people. Monetary Authority of Singapore should come forward and stop Grab from starting the robo-advisory. But if they don't, then on the name of the competition, this would kill several hundred robo-advisors only in Southeast Asia. And again, even after 5 years, Grab would be in loss in robo-advisory, as usual. Rest is in the hands of Singapore because we are not bothered much now because we are heading as London to be our bank. In fact, I'm very happy to say that before our bank, Treasury Consulting would be launching another bank, which would be Agriculture Bank. So we are launching two banks, and Agriculture Bank would be live around Q4 2020, and the big bank, Neo Bank, would be launched around April 2021, somewhere in Q2 2021 in the central London. So we're not bothered about who thinks who about us in Singapore, but one thing we definitely know that the way Singapore is heading nowadays, the way regulatory is heading, the way we formulate the laws which are of only theory, no practical, it clearly means that there are big mess of is there, and that is one of the reason that you can clearly see that Singaporean economy grew by 0.7% last year, and this year because of Chinese virus, and I really doubt it will get resolved in the next few months, the GDP might be much less. GDP might be much lesser than 0.7%, and banks anyways are firing people, we all know. So be careful, make sure that these loss-making companies should not get a chance to spoil the other startups, those who do not have billions and billions of funding like them. Else this would have a huge negative repercussion not only on these startups but also the image which Singapore created in the mind of others. I am only telling because I am concerned about Singapore. Had it been happened in India, I would have not bothered. I am telling because I am concerned about Singapore. Rest is the call of Monetary Authority of Singapore, but we strongly feel that a loss-making company like Grab filed application in the virtual banking license. This clearly signifies a violation of all rules. Simple. With this, we thank you very much. You know my mobile number, which is +91 9899242978. You know my other mobile number, which is again +91 9818485155. You know our fixed income platform, www.fixedincome.global. Before moving, we hold multiple WhatsApp groups. If you think you are a person who hold a passion, you think you hold, we of course scrutinize you. If you think that you are capable enough, you are welcome to join our groups. With this, we thank you very much and have a great time.